Sometimes you have questions that you're too afraid to ask
or too embarrassed to ask.
or lack the confidence to ask.
So that's why we're going to ask them for you right here on Asking for a Friend. So sit back, relax,
And enjoy the show.
Good Monday morning and afternoon, depending on where you're listening to us around the world. I'm Oscar Villacis, and this is Asking for a Friend. And before we get started in this amazing show that I've been anticipating for a while now, I want to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Boomer Graphics and Signs and Mi Jalisco and Rivera Nayarit. Truly amazing entrepreneurs right here within our community. Boomer Graphics and Signs for all your decals and any apparel that you might need. Well, I know that we're shifting into from brick and mortar to more e-commerce. And if you have some products that you would like to sell or maybe promote, or maybe just some apparel that you want to start, or maybe a clothing line, Boomer Graphics and Signs. Shout out to the team over there. And also women entrepreneur and women Latina entrepreneur right here within our community. We love to give them the flowers that they deserve, especially my partner being a woman entrepreneur right here and a producer, a juggernaut in the making. Make sure you check out her show, Love Lessons with a Latina. Carla Gutierrez is an amazing entrepreneur right here within our community. Started a business in the middle of a pandemic and just truly striving. And I love to see, entrepreneurs in the making and just keep moving forward. And the word of the day today is consistency. Consistency wins the race. So shout out to our sponsors for making this all possible. Our special guest, I've known her for more than a decade. Crazy. I've known her for more than a decade. She's been a reporter within the local community and has started off her own reporting in her own business with, I believe it's called Manchester Inc.
Manchester Ink Link, link to the ink.
Kara Robidoux, thank you so much for joining me today. And it's truly you're one of the the beginners, the first true supporters that saw a difference within a lot of minority kids up in the coming and young men that were trying to do something, and you gave us the light. You gave us the platform to be able to express ourselves and to say, hey, check out these kids. These kids have an amazing idea. And it all started about more than 10 years ago. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, starting off, and what an honor to have you on my show.
Well, it feels like a homecoming in some ways. But yeah, 10 years ago, I was reminiscing as I was zooming past the Nashua Children's Home and, hanging a right onto Main Street and then seeing sort of all the changes, even the studio, the radio that I was familiar with George Russell was down the street a bit, and I saw the construction, and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? But it was a little further up. I was not thinking straight. Yeah. But yeah, back in those days, when we came into Nashua, it was part of Patch, and Patch was a national news effort, but it gave me the freedom to kind of be one editor, one city, and when I met all of you guys, I think it started with James Veo's Visualize Nashua, and you guys were all connected downtown there. And we came for meetings. And I remember the first meeting that Cecilia and Manny were at, and they hadn't even really actualized positive street art.
It wasn't even a 501c3 yet.
It was just, we have a kind of an idea that we want to maybe do, and we wonder how we can get there kind of thing. And to see all of the growth and everything, I think what we were able to do was really just actively shine a spotlight on everything, when they were painting those cubes to look like packages for Christmas. Every little effort was big news because it's community news, and that's kind of what we do in Manchester now. Patch is still around, but I'm doing my own independent news thing, and it feels great.
What inspired you to get involved with Patch, and how did you come about to Nashua out of all places? pick Nashua?
So Nashua, I moved here 20 years ago from Pennsylvania for a job at the Union Leader. So I lived here in Nashua for a couple of years until we moved to Manchester, which was closer to my husband's job as well. But that kind of coincides with the decline of journalism and, well, not the decline of journalism, but the news business as such. Reporter jobs have shrunk maybe, I don't know, 30% over the last decade or more. And it's just sort of hard to figure out where the value is for a reporter that wants to be a community reporter. So I was at the Union Leader, and then they downsized me into a contractor from a full-time staff reporter, which was a big blow to us as a family, but we figured it out. And then I heard that Patch existed and was coming to Manchester, and was thinking like that's something the Union Leader should be doing, is more digital news. And then sort of I had a little dust up with my editor and decided to quit the Union Leader. And then that same day, Patch editor at the time, Mark Fortier, he heard through the reporter grapevine that I was available. So he called me and asked if I would be interested in covering Nashua for Patch. And of course, that to me was exciting because I know Nashua. I love Nashua. And the other part was, because of my experience, they were looking for someone who could handle the biggest city that Patch was doing in New Hampshire. They wouldn't go any bigger than like 50,000 people population. But prior to Nashua, they said, let's give Nashua a try, but it has to be the right person. And so I felt like, I am the right person because I really love Nashua and I can do this.
And you were involved. We always saw you out and about.
Oh, I was everywhere.
You were engaged, and you sat down with us, and you kind of observed and gave us some pointers, which we needed.
I ate food at your house.
Oh, which
and met your brother, and
which we needed. We needed that connection, somebody that didn't look like us but advocated for us.
Yeah.
And you were one of those people that truly gave us a platform to be able to shine, to expand. Why the risk of going from something stable like the Union Leader and then all of a sudden going digital? Because I know that at that time it wasn't quite the pivot, but you noticed that people started reading the paper less, and they weren't getting delivered at home, and people just opened their phone and boom, there you go, the news.
I mean, at that time I had teenagers, so I was kind of like watching everything that was happening.
Right.
And I had been to a tweet up in Manchester, and that was, I had no idea what Twitter was, but I went to a tweet up, and then I remember coming home from the tweet up, and my son and all his friends were sitting in the kitchen eating all our food, as they always did. And I said, you guys, you got to find out about Twitter. I just went to a tweet up. It's going to be huge. And they all looked at me like with these glassy eyes. Although I ran into one of those kids at the supermarket a couple weeks ago. He's like, I'll never forget. It was like being in Back to the Future, talking about like, futures in Yahoo or something. But he said, like, you said Twitter, and I never forgot that. It was like you were a
Were they
swami or
using
something.
it?
No, they didn't know anything about it.
Wow.
But I found out about it, and then sort of that was my idea, my thought process into what does the future of news look like. At the time, nobody knew what to tweet about. Like people would say, like, well, what should I say? I'm eating a sandwich? I don't know. Like, what's the point? But we learned how to use that. And I think for me, I've always kind of had a expansive, well, you're married to a Sagittarius, we're Jupiter. Jupiter rules it's a ruling planet, and we think big, and we think expansion, and we think about future. For me, it was just kind of like, what an exciting opportunity. I wasn't scared. I wasn't really thrilled being at the Union Leader. They were about a decade behind when I got there from Pennsylvania in terms of no internet. They didn't use the word Google in writing because they didn't want to give Google any boost. And I'm like, Google's here, guys.
Yeah.
Like, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
So, I always believe either adapt or die.
Yeah, you have to. And you never know. And risk is, as you get older, especially, I think you learn you have to go out on some limbs sometimes. And then you just have to get pretty good at like rolling, if you should fall, and get back up again.
I think it was that mindset that really pivot even the communities to get other people to see all these stories to inspire them to start something or to
People
do something.
loved Patch because it felt like it was actually a human being that cared about their community,
Right.
and not just a reporter who was being paid
Right.
to sit through a meeting or something. I attended so many meetings, so many events. I knew so many people's kids and their stories, and cried and laughed. And, it's like, if you don't know a community like that, how can you really know what matters to that community? There's an agenda always. There's an official city hall agenda of meeting stuff and what's on that agenda. And that does matter to a community. But that's not the whole story of a community, and it's the struggles, and it's the emerging ideas, and the people like Tom Lopez, all those. And look at him now. It's
Right.
like he was just a kind of a radical,
Volunteer.
troublemaker,
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of trying to always, stir up something.
No,
And
if
Paul Shea,
Yeah.
another one. They're all living on the edge of something, and now they're really part of the fabric of this community, just like all of you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true, but decades ago in Pennsylvania, I was a youth editor, and we brought kids in to write, and those kids learned about being heard and having a voice. And I don't know for sure, but part of me thinks being able to have a spotlight on a regular basis, more so than maybe you would have had with other publications,
Right.
and telling your stories and saying, look what these guys are doing, and having it be accessible to everybody. It was a free publication, so people didn't have to pay for a subscription to find out what was happening. I like to hope that maybe that helped in some way to give you guys momentum to say, like, yeah, look, we made the patch. Like,
Absolutely.
let's keep going. Let's do more.
And it was so engaging too, because people, it was like a commentary. These were the news. People got involved, and they put their input, and then it just sparked another conversation, maybe to maybe broadcast this opportunity, and it was real, and it was raw, and it was by the people for the people.
Exactly.
And it was so authentic because you were so accessible. Hey, Carol, this is going on. Do you mind shedding some light on that? Well, let me go figure it out. Let me go ask.
Yeah, and I would just go with my camera or my video,
Yeah.
do some quick. We called it quick and dirty.
Yeah.
You just take a 2-minute video and you add a little, headline to it, and you put it right up from your phone. Like, there's no heavy editing, there's no conferring with someone else. I was the boss of it. Like, it was up to me, and we loved that.
When you left, people were upset.
Yeah.
I was upset.
I thought about starting something here instead of
Yeah.
Manchester, but the reason I went to Manchester was a few things. One, Patch was staying in Nashua, and I don't know that they have a real presence here. I know there is still a Nashua Patch, but I think it's sort of just like, stories that go
yeah,
everywhere. They
not
plug
consistent.
in. The Telegraph at the time was here. Now they've scaled back a bit to just digital and maybe a print publication on the weekend or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But at the time, I just felt like Nashua does have a dedicated paper, and they have the Patch. Manchester only really had the Union Leader, and having come from that culture, I felt like it's a big community, and there's a lot and they're covering the whole state. I feel like Manchester needs some love, and I lived there, and really
Yeah.
for the whole time I lived in Manchester and commuted here, I wasn't plugged into Manchester. So I felt like it's time for me to get to know my city
Right.
in an intimate way.
Right.
So let me give this a shot.
Especially the Manchester being the hub of like the welcome center
Yeah.
of all migrants that come
Yeah.
here. We just learned last week that there's a school that has 73 languages, active languages right now as we speak, with people from all over the world.
Yeah, they step right into that, and when they come here, and it's incredible to see how the kids can really, and this from your own experience, I suppose, in some ways, like covering this community. Kids are amazing. They're like little sponges,
Right.
but it creates another burden for the kids to have to be sort of the translator for the family,
Right.
and to help their parents figure out the land, and their kids. Like,
Right.
you're like basically trusting your life to like a 10-year-old or something. That's really nuts. But yeah, there's so much there and so much needed. And I've had the conversation with some people in in Manchester, like Arnold McCullough and Dale Wano, that, you know, in the 10, 20 some years that we've been bringing generations of families here, are we really doing better? Or is it all still the same process? Like,
Right.
it should be streamlined. It should be more focused on eliminating the time barriers. It takes so long to get people settled in. Like, why don't we have a better system by now? We've been doing it long enough,
Right.
and we should have learned some things from the previous generations that are now growing up and like you being sort of active partners in the community. So.
Yeah. How do you, when you, as a journalist, how do you distinguish the authentic story from somebody that's just trying to broadcast? That's just trying to promote.
Mm.
That person that's self-indulging or just like kind of self-promoting instead of an actual authentic story.
Well, I think, as a reporter, part of it is doing your legwork a little bit, and it's sort of getting that person's story, talking to them, finding out how they got to where they are and what it is they're trying to do here, and sort of who they're connected to already or what they have going on. And sometimes it's just your guts that, you kind of have to figure out what it feels like, but it's hard to always know, but it's always a trust walk, and it happens. Like, the worst thing that happens in that scenario is that you give somebody some space or some promotion or some ink that probably didn't deserve it.
Right.
And there's good and bad.
Are they really being authentic, their authentic self? So what is their motive,
Yeah.
I'll never forget when that story came out about me. There's something about you that just made me want to pour out,
It's that
and
magic
just,
thing I do.
that just made me want to pour out because that was just the most vulnerable piece I've ever spoken about.
Well, and I feel like part of it is because, and this is no bull. I mean, I really I got in the news business not because I'm a news hound. I don't really like the news that much, or
Especially
what we think
nowadays.
of as news. Like, I'm not going after every little crime wave store bad guy. Like, I almost became a social worker. I didn't know what to do with my life. I was a teen mom at 16, and then I finally got to college. But I mostly just cared about people and their stories, and I like to write. And so I figured at that point I had to be practical. If I can write, I probably figure out a career where writing is involved. Journalism, like, that's the only thing I could come up with.
Yeah.
So I went into the news idea that I would be like a features writer. I would write stories that shed light on people in their lives, and I was able to do that in Pennsylvania because I was a features writer and a columnist, and I ran a teen section. It was kind of a dream job, and this is a different kind of economic burden, like outside of like immigrants, refugees, women.
Right.
I went to college. My husband did not. He was a blue-collar guy. And the point was for me to do something to elevate our family financially once I went to college, because I had the ambition to do it.
Right.
But it was hard. It's hard as a woman to get ahead in any industry. So this job up here was paying more than what I was making in Pennsylvania. So I put aside the joy of my job and said, let's go to New Hampshire, family. So I moved my little kids up here. And the job here was more focused on the news. I was working the night side, so all the crime, had to chase all the ambulances, go to all the fires, go to all the murders, go to all the mayhem. But in between, I learned how to leverage that into stories about the community, because when you go to a neighborhood where there's a fire and there's a multifamily building and all these people are huddled on the street,
Right.
you get their stories, you find out there's humanity here, and you follow up and find out what happened to them or whatever.
Yeah.
So when, in doing your story, to me, it was like so many layers of interest about who you were, how you got here,
Yeah.
where did you come from, how did this city shape you? Let's be honest about, like I just said, I was a teen mom at 16. I don't wear a badge of honor for that. That was kind of a dark time in that moment when you're 16 and you got to tell your mom, oh, forget all those future plans you have for me. But I turned that around in my life to build a whole different life. And I am who I am because of those experiences that I had. And I think, some of your experiences shaped you and gave you a window into some amazing, insightful things about the criminal justice system. How do we treat kids that get sucked into the system? And as once again, we're talking about kids here, but how many kids right now are being treated like cold, hard criminals?
Right.
And what they really need is maybe some tough love and some actual love, and they need to find their lane and feel like they're doing something constructive and dream a little bit again and feel like there can be a future. I don't know how we get there exactly, but it's part of the problem we're having right now with so many people just feeling lost. But I felt like your story had so much in it that it had to be told with, I don't know. It was compelling to me. So I feel like maybe my genuine interest in you and your story is what made you feel, and it's trust too.
Yeah.
You trusted me.
Right. No, I
thank you for trusting me with your story.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I went back to the National Children's Home, and I was reflecting on life. I was 24 at the time. 23, 24.
Do you remember we went there together? We were going to try to do something with the kids.
Right.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard to, as you know now, it's so hard to make anything happen.
Absolutely.
Big ideas are something,
Right.
but there's so much more.
Exactly. I went back. Like before you and with you, and I looked at these kids, and I just automatically felt like I was there. I felt like they were in that position. I saw a kid in the corner reading a book, or just maybe staring at the wall, and I felt how I felt when I was there. I was like, is this it? And is this action of my youth gonna determine the rest of my life? Or am I the young man that a lot of judges, probation officers, guardian ad litems say that I'm a lost cause? I felt like that at the time, and then I looked at my other peers around, and then I looked at these kids, and they had the same look. So I said to myself, if I am not real with myself and with these other kids to be able to inspire them, then this is for nothing. And then we went over to my house, and then I see my little brother, completely George, yeah. Completely different dynamic, but he didn't grow up like I grew up.
Yeah.
So I don't want him to be like, yeah, my brother went through it, I'm going to be fine. I can do whatever, cuz my brother's going to be there, or he can guide me through. I want to be authentic enough to say this is what I've done, but this is not who I am. This is who I want to be, and this is how I want to inspire. Because a lot of kids in those times, I don't know how the National Children's Home is now, but like there was completely isolation, and they'll put you in a timeout room where you kind of self-contain, and you see a lot of kids going through their own emotions and battling with 13, 15, 14 other kids.
Yeah. Things have probably even gotten, it'd be interesting. It's a good question, and something maybe that, one of us or both of us should look at, because you look at what's happened at the Sununu Center in Manchester, and a lot of drama around past experiences, but even trying to find staff that wants to work with these kids that have so many layers of issues, that are tough. And look at the world that we live in. Pandemic, opioid issues that probably affected their parents or families, or losing their parents and being raised by grandparents, or whatever. Like, who knows? But it's a lot to figure out, and I don't know who wants to do that work. It's not really high reward for anybody to be. How kids are.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're gonna hug you every day and thank you for caring about them and being there, they're going to probably take a lot out on you because you're the closest adult in the room to project your anger on. It's tough. But we have to, but I say this about everything, and even the Harmony Montgomery case, the little girl that's missing in Manchester. If this doesn't wake us up to the fact that we need to do better by our kids, we need to take care of them, keep them safe. We have to look at all kids and whatever their situation is, whether it's because they're from a family of refugees and immigrants and they don't have connectivity to our community, so
proper representation.
Nobody sees them exactly, or they're kind of, I mean, we just have to see kids and have resources for them and caring adults there before they really need help. Just guidance and just love,
I'll never forget the time that we were airing that story, and the reason we did that story was because I was trying to start a nonprofit called Untouched Talent.
Yep.
Alongside with Positive Street Art. That story aired. I don't think I've ever told this to anybody. I had a meeting with an alderman across the street when it was not Bonhoeffer's. Across the street from Agave, there was a little coffee shop. I forgot what it was called. It's where Flight is now. And sat down with this alderman and told him about my story and what I'm trying to do. And the approach was that approach of an adult, not going up to a kid and saying, hey, I know what's best for you. Hey, let's learn together. Let's grow together. And also let's see what your interests are, because maybe you have some insights as equals, because that's the part about connecting with children, is being able to relate, being able to come down to their level and say, I'm not a threat. I'm not coming to you like if I know better. I'm coming to you as a mentor or somebody that can teach you something, or somebody that can learn from you, right? And being able to approach these kids in a creative way, and within fashion and something that we can all relate to. That's what Untouched Talent was about, unveiling your art and soul, right? So I sat down and I explained this to the alderman at the time. And I would never forget the most vulnerable way of me. Here I am again. I feel like a kid at the Natural Children's Home going up to a guidance counselor or going up to a probation officer and explaining how I'm going to change and how things that I'm trying to do. And I'm seeking for help because I'm stepping into something I've never done before. And out of all of that, this alderman criticizes the name and goes, well, I love the concept, by the way. I love what you're doing. I love your story, blah, 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 blah. Untouched talent, untouched kids. It just kind of seems, I don't know. I would think about the name. That never, ever, ever crossed my mind. But the fact that he would take something so pure, and some people might say, well, he's just probably giving you some constructive criticism, just covering you at all angles. But the fact that he would just take something so pure, that is the reason why Untouched Talent didn't move forward as a 501c3. Mm. He distinguished, he took a moment, so pure, and he just diminished it by just tarnishing before it even existed. And that's exactly why we have to protect these kids from mentalities of adults projecting their own fear and their own insecurity. And this is coming from somebody, a city official, right? That I can see. The fact that an alderman can sit down with a minority kid from Nashua, New Hampshire, and and in my most vulnerable time to see that he would want to see what I have to offer for the city, for our community, for the kids, and then takes that moment and just rip it from me. I will never forget him for that. That was just disgusting, and I look at it like there's still so much to be done. There's still opportunity to be able to grow, to teach these kids, because it just takes moments like that for kids to be completely vulnerable and just have their dreams completely shattered.
Yeah.
You know, and that we will still continue with that. I feel like that's a project that I haven't sealed it shut yet, but something that I will go down to restart and hash down, because I'm not the same gentleman I was then.
Yeah. And life, moves you where it needs to. Like if when that bubbles up, then you'll know it's time. And for right now, I think it's easy to want to do everything, but
Right.
you're doing something right now that has a great benefit to your community as well and amplifies voices. And certainly you can talk to people who are in that space about, or maybe there's not enough of them. I don't even know who's addressing. A positive street art, I assume, is still doing some of that, although I think they've evolved as well.
Yeah, as artists themselves. And shout out to Cecilia and Manny.
Yeah.
I always I always bring them up because they're guys from my community. They're from the BIPOC community, which we rose together. Like you can't say Manny without Oscar, and you can't say Oscar without Manny, and you can't say the group without the positivity, because the inspirations grew from within, from that connection, and those outlets. I still think that there's an opportunity within us, because I feel that we're still stuck in the diversity and inclusion type of scenario where people love what we're doing, but not really value the worth yet.
I mean, it came it rose like a mushroom cloud or something. It's like everywhere you turn and everyone you talk to, everybody's talking about diversity and inclusion and everything.
Right.
They're talking.
Right.
You talk the talk, but let's walk the walk here.
Right.
Let's. I've always, since my days in Pennsylvania, where we learned in the newsroom, like, if you're telling a story, make sure you have a list of experts that are men, women, Black, Asian, Latino, queer, whatever. And when you're just writing a story about something that requires an expert opinion on psychology or city planning or something, don't just go to the same guy that you always interview. Find a new voice and bring that into your story, not because the story has to reflect diversity on the face of it, not because it's a story about diversity, but because it's a story about our community, and these people are part of our community, and what they have to say matters. And when you elevate those people in stories, you're actually doing more than just saying, here's a story about Black people. See, here's their faces. They're Black, and we found them for this story. And we're never going to talk to them again. Thank you for being here. Thank you very much. And, we made our quota of stories this month. Right. And I always hated that. If you can't tell a story without pointing out something about diversity and inclusion and equity, it's like, okay, I grew up in the 70s, and I'm born in the 50s, a product of the 60s. I remember Martin Luther King Jr., and my best friend at age 3 was a Black girl named Wanda. We ate soup together at her house and talked about life, and she was just my best friend. And I learned that friendship looks like Wanda. Friendship looks like whatever. And when they bust kids into our school in the 60s that were all segregated in one place, and then they came to my school, I was like, yippee! The music just got better. The dancing just got better. Everything that I've always wanted to.
My taste buds are exploding.
Yeah, in 3rd grade, I danced in a talent show to a song called Funky Street by Arthur Conley. I'm this little fat white girl dancing on a stage. I never had a dance lesson in my life, but the music moved me. It was like Little Miss Sunshine. I had to dance to this song. Finally, in 6th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, when the world caught up to me, I feel like, I'd been waiting for this moment of integration and feeling equal and all of that. And then in the 70s, for a minute, it felt like we got there. We all listened to the same music. We all danced the same dances. There was no, division of what culture one person liked and what culture other people liked. But something shifted. I don't know if it was Reaganomics. I don't know what changed it. But for a minute, it felt like it worked. We got through the race riots, and now we're all on the same page. But then things started moving in another direction. And where we are today is difficult for me sometimes. I cannot believe that we still have to have these conversations in the year 2022.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, like, we have a pandemic. We have racist riots happening. We have a political climate.
Anti-Semitism.
Exactly. We have minorities migrating to our state. And then
Even the word minority has always bothered me because it's like...
Right.
It's just a way of saying with a majority and the minority.
Yeah,
I don't know
that,
but I know. But you have to define it somehow.
And I want to, because I'm trying to be politically correct.
Do you have to be?
We can always say underserved.
That kind of bothers me too. Because I mean, it is true. It is true. But the majority, the minority, and then underserved, and with everything happening, right? With all these this unbalance that we feel within the climate, and every time we turn on the news and we hear it's on social media, it's when we wake up. How do you find the positivity through the darkness that's happening? And how do you highlight these amazing stories that are happening, and how do you juggle it all?
I mean, to me, it's funny. You should ask, because we just did a fundraiser. We had the opportunity to do a nonprofit, or had a nonprofit fiscal agent, and we were able to raise money for 3 months at the end of the year as tax deductible donations. And I asked our readers to contribute toward our 2022 reporting, which we're going to call Manchester Rising, and we're going to feature stories about people, entities, ideas that lift our city up. And the reason is, I think, just what you said, after all that we've been through with the pandemic and with George Floyd, and people sort of their true colors showing, and the insurrection in Washington, and our politics that divide us, and all of that, we forget that in community settings, we all live here. We have to find a way. And there are amazing people like you guys, like you and Cecilia and Manny and James and Paul Shea, like back in the day, doing your thing. Like, you weren't focused on the negative. You guys were all every day excited about your ideas to make things better. Let's do this. Like, let's have a thing. Let's create a moment. Let's have a street block party. Like the block parties. Remember that? I don't know if they still happen, but probably not now. But they had a block party, like 5 simultaneous block parties at once that happened. And, one of them in this neighborhood had a bouncy house, and this one had,
face painting
or whatever.
Right.
It was amazing. Like, each little piece of this community got to have a day of fun and celebration that reflected them. And stuff like that. There's people like that out there who don't have a platform, or that nobody sees them, nobody knows what they're doing, or they're just quietly doing their job without realizing how many people they're impacting. So for me, that's the stuff we need to be reminded of. Like, nobody needs to remind you there's mayhem, because every day on your news feed, news break app, watch the top 5 minutes of WMUR. It's like every disaster that's happened on planet Earth in the first 5 minutes, and you're like, holy crap, why do I even live here or live at all? It's like sad news everywhere.
Right.
And it's
anxiety arising.
And it's not new. This has always been life. Go back 100 years and look at the newspapers. It was even worse, because there was like no toilets or something. I mean, it's like all of this plus no place to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Like, it's like, so let's understand that human nature is what we're talking about.
Right.
And I think the rise of digital everything has shifted us so quickly from, say, where we were 20 years ago, just starting to get used to email.
Right.
And now we are.
You got mail.
Yeah, and now at lightning speed, we have the entire universe at our fingertips. We can watch a movie, we can talk to somebody in real time. You know, we can get in trouble
Yeah.
real fast on TikTok or any place. You know, like,
Right.
and kids have all this power. Kids are wielding this power. You know, it's like scare. And what would you do? Like you use restraint.
Right.
You know, because you're an adult. You know, probably there's things I shouldn't be putting up there on the internet. But kids, no filter, nobody to restrict them like some kids. So, yeah, I don't know. The question was, how do I stay positive? And I think I try to focus on. There's so many positive things and people, more than there are negative on any given day. But when the police department will send you like 3 press releases of all the arrests they made, and that makes the evening news and it makes the Union Leader front page, and it's just more of the same stuff that happens every day. Why? Because there's sad people out there. Why? Because they're addicted to something. Why? Because they had a big hole in their life and tried to fill it with drugs. Why? Because their family fell apart. Why? Because they lived in poverty and they couldn't find jobs. Why? Because they were uneducated, or people of color, or people who whatever that you can just keep going back to see the layers of societal issues that have given rise to the sad things that happen in our world. But that's not everything. And somebody once said to me, like, the worst thing you know about somebody is not the truest. And we have to remember that in all things. When somebody makes the front page for doing wrong, yeah, they messed up. But they've done other things. And you know it when it's someone you know, or a loved one. Or your loved one makes a mistake. It's like, that's not the most important thing about them. You got to forgive. Absolutely. You got to let go, you know. What am I talking about? It feels like therapy.
When you come into the session with us, it feels like that sometimes, you know. The reason I said minority earlier is because when you know how this came about, these shows and First Gen American, was because of the rant that happened outside.
Yeah.
And as soon as the paper came out, I got a phone. Well, after that happened and we were able to raise money to get this airtime, I got a phone call from the Telegraph, and there was this editor that said, "Hey, can you tell us a little bit about the story? What you did was phenomenal." And I told them exactly what happened, the breakdown, how we came about, how we're gonna move forward. I'll never forget the time I got the Telegraph. Actually, somebody showed it to me. They took a picture, sent it to me. Then I saw Hispanic man takes over radio station, and I'm like, this is completely the opposite of what we're trying to do. Why not just like a brave man takes over, you know, radio show, never done it before, and trying to enlighten his community.
We used to talk about this all the time. Can you imagine if Paul Shea started a radio station and the headline said, "Red-haired white guy, Caucasian, starts something in Nashua"?
Yeah.
What is that about? What does that have to do with anything?
Right.
And granted, the whole issue was around racism or something, you know, but it doesn't matter if it's how we frame things. It's like we are people, we are human race, we are all connected in that way. And when we step away from some of those identifiers and dividing lines and celebrate the fact that we're all in this together, but we're not all exactly the same. We have something to learn from each other.
Right.
We do a lot better, but yeah, Hispanic man.
Yeah, Hispanic man takes over radio station, and I'm just like, radio show.
Sounds almost like you came in your boat and put your flag in and conquered it.
Christopher Columbus style.
I'm doing this for Hispania.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And then I was just like, this is completely different. This is why we need to do what we're doing, because there's an opportunity still. Especially, nothing's changed within. I would hope that yes, our voices are being amplified. Our actions are stronger more than ever. We're moving, but then you still hear like that some companies want to take they want to be included within the diversity and inclusion, but when it comes to actually handing the mic over to those individuals within that community, it's not part of the agenda.
Mm.
You know, and I think that that's the opportunity. I feel that we still have there's still some amount of representatives that actually are just not the face, but or that they have some type of control or say input of what they're trying to portray out into the community. And I feel like, just like how you said, when we have aldermen, the older generation stepping in and saying, we know what's best. It's been working for years. Has been this way before my father and my grandfather and my great grandfather. I think it's now time to pave the way for a younger, more inclusive, diverse demographic to be able to make a change.
It's it's so funny because I'm 62 now, and I'm almost at that age where you're supposed to retire and let go of everything. And there's part of me that understands that now. When I look at the world and I see my kids who range in age from like 27 to 45 or whatever, like this is their world now. Like I'm just living in it, and I'm doing my part, but I want to pass on what I'm doing. Even I want to open it up to young voices, diverse voices, people that care about our community and stuff. I would be so happy to step aside on some level and see what young people could do if they actually had the control and the power to make they're so smart, they're so connected. Yes, we need to respect the history of our cities and our towns and our world. And yes, we need to acknowledge where we came from and not forget and keep connected to that institutional knowledge. But the baby boomers, sorry, fellow boomers, are so reluctant to let go. We think, Cher's doing it. 70 is the new 30. Like, I don't have to stop. I can keep doing this. I think there's a reason to age out.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason. Doesn't mean you have to, age out and go to the nursing home.
Right.
There's a lot. What if you aged out of what it is you're controlling, and then you went back into your community and tried to fix some of the things that are wrong?
Right.
That you didn't have time to address when you were busy hustling and making money and climbing the ladder.
Right.
What if we all gave back something amazing? Like, why not? Just there's so many people that need help. So I would love to see that happen. I don't know, but there's people that you have to you can't really get their hands off of the wheel. It's like they're clenching it. Like, we must stay in control.
Yeah.
I think young people are amazing.
I think that we still have a lot to learn, but our input is valid and our passion is strong, and with a little bit of guidance, just a little bit of guidance, I always tell all our listeners, our partners, internal partners, that we are not teachers. We're students. We're students of the craft. We've never done this before. Jasmine's never done this before. I've never hosted a radio show before. We're brand new to this.
But you're kicking ass.
Thank you so
I mean,
much.
but it's like look at the kids today coming up, the little ones, the ones that are 12, 13, 14. They are so accepting, to me, it seems, of everybody for who they are, like true rainbow children or something. It's like refreshing to feel like maybe all the really racism and bigotry and non-understanding is just gonna hopefully die off at some point, and we're gonna have a world that at least accepts each other somehow. And your generation, you're so ripe for this moment, the technology,
Right.
the information, the efficiencies, doing things in a smart way, knowing how to streamline things. Like, that's where we're at. That's where we need to be.
Right.
We don't have to, although was just reading a story about the rise of folk schools where people go to unplug and learn how to make stuff out of steel by hammering it and creating, going back to the olden days. So who knows, in 100 years, who knows? Maybe we're going to look like we did 200 years ago. Maybe your generation is going to say, or the youngest generation is going to say, like, We don't want these anymore. These are ruining everybody's lives.
Yeah.
We need to get back to nature. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, you never know. It's crazy.
What do you tell that young journalist that's up in the rise and that has self-doubt and that, that just doesn't know what to put out? They have all this information but just doesn't know what to put out. And they're finding their way.
Yeah, I would say this to probably just about anybody, but even especially a journalist. Like, the truth is important. People's stories are important, but you have to handle them with care. You have to listen more than you talk. You have to have good questions, but you really have to hear what somebody's saying in the context of what it is. And don't be in a mad rush to get something out there, because you can be first, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the best opportunity to tell someone's story. That's the old school. You got to beat everybody to the punch, and it's not really a race. The thing people forget is you're dealing with other people's lives.
Right.
It's just a story to you. It's just a piece of content for your media company, and they just accumulate in a cloud somewhere. But when that moment's over, and I guess you can relate to this on some level, that story is out there because it's somebody's life. It's somebody's story. And you want it to be true, and you want it to be honest, and you want to handle it with care, because it's very personal, and those are the stories that tell a community's whole story. That's what I used to say this to young journalists, like, when you approach a story, it's a story. You're telling a story. You tell it like you're talking to your best friend. The most important part, the most compelling part, that's your lead. The thing that you can't wait to tell them about. You just got home, from a party. Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened. That's your lead.
Right.
Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened. Somebody said this to me and it blew up, or whatever.
Right.
And then you have the facts. And then at the end, you try to tie a bow on it and make it all come together. But I mean, really, in this world, we're never going to not want more information. People want to know stuff. So you need good, reliable people that are willing to take the time to get the information and to get the stories and to get the facts right. And just, sort of emulate people out there that are doing it already, that you respect and admire, and write them a fan letter and, take them out for a beer or something or for coffee and find out what makes them tick, always, in any profession. If somebody's doing something that you feel like is a very important thing, go talk to them, find out what makes them tick, and then apply that to yourself.
I think that, when you did that piece of on me, the Natural Children's Home and the nonprofit, I think that I emulated a little bit, and that vulnerability that I had with your story was something that I want to protect from the vulnerability of anybody and any guests that come into our shows, because that piece is forever in the archives, and that piece of vulnerability and honesty and humanity that we need, it's compelling and it's impactful forever in the digital era, so they can go back and listen to that moment and feel proud, just like I feel proud of how you wrote that story about me. And you were, and a little bit of that moment is what truly inspires me to keep moving forward within these shows. So I thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything you do and everything you've done for us in the past, because you were the first advocate within this community that set the trend for everybody else to truly follow. So thank you.
Well, you got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cara Robidoux. Check her out on our website if you want to plug it in.
Yep, ManchesterInkLink.com, like a link to the ink. And you can find us on Facebook. You can just put in Ink Link, probably come up, Manchester, put my name, whatever, it's pretty easy to find now. So
thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so
much. And
much.
shout out to anybody from Nashua that remembers me back in the day.
Are you kidding me? You're a local legend.
Yeah.
You're a local legend.
Excellent.
This has been Asking for a Friend. I'm your host, Oscar Villacis, with special guest Cara Robidoux. Thank you so much for listening in and joining us. Make sure you like and follow and share this great content for more great contents to come. Thank you.